We're talking the early strategy if you have a top 4 pick. Obviously, with the exclusion of drafting a Jamar Chase, say you get 1-1 or he falls to 1-2. Let's look how it would be if you grabbed an RB, one of the top running backs like a Jahmyr Gibbs or a Bijan Robinson or a Saquon Barkley with a 4th pick. I was doing a mock before, and say you want to grab that staple RB because every year there's fewer and fewer bell cows that you can rely on. And in truth, those are the guys that you usually depend on when it comes time for fantasy football playoffs. So say you start off by drafting one of those 3. Then on the swing, I think depending on, what kind of drafter you are, you could opt to go back. But I think the wide receivers looking in rounds 3 and 4, you're definitely in a position where having one of those guys as your one is not a preferred option. So let's say you go balance first, right? You grab one of the 3 backs, and then second round, say you're drafting 4th overall, and on the swing in the second round, you're in a 12-team half PPR league. You could be looking at somebody like A.J. Brown or Ladd McConkey as your one. Obviously not the elite fantasy receivers, but definitely guys I expect to have big seasons. So it's not a terrible look. But then the great part is you're going to have a nice early swing in that 3rd round, and that's a big pick. So that's an opportunity for you to go either way with a running back or receiver. In my opinion, it looks like that late 2nd, early 3rd round turn is a good opportunity to grab a really strong RB2, a guy like Kyren or Chase Brown or James Cook. Now, obviously, some of you are in a little bit more aggressive leagues, and those guys may not make it to your early 3rd pick, possibly even your late 2nd, but this is overall more for a typical fantasy drafter. So let's say we're grabbing one of Kyren, Brown, or Cook. Then through 3 picks, you're looking like either Bijan, Gibbs, or Barkley, McConkey or Arthur, Shelby Brown as your wide receiver 1, and then either Kyren, Chase Brown, or James Cook as your RB2. So obviously the backs are looking healthy. Next is the 4th round pick, and this is starting to get to money time here. Usually I like to think picks 4 through 8 to 9 are where you can win your draft or lose it. So this is the opportunity where you'd be looking at somebody like DJ Moore or Cortland Sutton or DK Metcalf as your wide receiver 2 at the end of the 4th round there. Personally, I would probably lean DJ Moore of the 3. So after that, you're looking at one of the backs. You're looking at AJ or Ladd McConkey, either Kyren, Brown, or Cook as your RB2 in the 3rd round. And I would go DJ Moore in the 4th there, assuming he is there. But I don't think you could go wrong with Sutton. And I think DK Metcalf, considering he's working with Aaron Rodgers and he's still a freak of nature, can be a very solid fantasy contributor and decent wide receiver too in 2025 here. Then if that's ultimately the route that you go, you're looking balanced here, 2 backs, 2 receivers through your first 4 picks. Then I think you're starting to get into the middle of the rounds where it can start going best available, and then you navigate and pivot based on your selections. So say the 5th round, you're looking at a DeAndre Swift. He might fall in some of your drafts. I've been pretty vocal over the summer about liking Swift. I think he's going to be a solid RB2. I think he'll be a great RB3 in Chicago this year. Somebody you can plug in your flex every week, and think he could definitely get up to top 24 RB status, which would live up to an RB2 in 2025. So say you go Swift in your 5th overall pick, then I think you're also going to have to pivot in the 6th and see who's best available. The wide receivers start getting a little hairy. We're looking at 2 wide receivers, 3 running backs here. Personally, I wouldn't be pressured to fill out my roster and just take a wide receiver for filling out my roster purposes. I'm still drafting best available. 6th round, we're probably still looking at somebody like an Aaron Jones. I feel like Aaron Jones in Minnesota this year is up for a 1,000-yard season, possibly 1,400 yard scrimmage, 10 touchdowns. Definitely somebody that is looking like a strong RB3 in fantasy. But obviously, you could still go with receiver or maybe make a pivot and go quarterback. Unless I'm feeling frisky and I want to have some fun and take like a Josh Allen or a Lamar early this year, the quarterback fantasy class is pretty deep. So if I'm not getting one of those guys, or maybe even like a Joe Burrow in the 4th, then I'm waiting on somebody like a Dak Prescott closer to double-digit rounds. For me, I'm probably looking at filling out my receivers in the 7th, because then it starts getting into that territory where, like, okay, round 6 through 7 and 8, you could be looking at like a Jerry Jeudy or a Chris Olave or a Calvin Ridley type. Obviously, all depends on how your draft progresses. But I think Jerry Jeudy in the 7th is something that's a pretty realistic here for 2025. And then I think in the 8th round, you could start looking at tight end. Based on the flow of the draft, you could be looking at a little bit more of a grabbing tight end early mentality. Maybe you grab somebody like Evan Ingram in the 7th. Also somebody I've been vocal about this year. I might actually end up drafting Evan Ingram a little bit earlier this season. I think in Denver, we've talked about it before, he could inherit something of that Jimmy Graham type of role that Sean Payton was so generous with Graham in the 2010s. Not saying Ingram's going to put up that kind of a season, but I feel like as a fantasy tight end this year, he could definitely crack the top 5, possibly even the top 3 if everything goes according to plan. Then once you start getting to the 9th round, you're looking at filling out your roster in its entirety. Then you could start looking at the quarterback situation. Maybe Dak Prescott's still available. I don't mind him, but even still, I feel like Prescott, Jordan Love are good options this year. Definitely want to make sure that you're filling out your roster, but also don't feel pressured to do so if you opt to go best available and still have somebody like an Aaron Jones on your board and you're just not in love with the receivers or the tight ends that are currently on the board. And just to reiterate, I do think the quarterback situation is something you can wait on this year. You have guys like Prescott, Jared Goff, Brock Purdy, Jordan Love. I think Caleb Williams is going to be solid this year. I love Michael Penix late. I've talked about that a bunch. I think somebody even like Justin Herbert could be good for fantasy purposes in a lot of matchups throughout the season. So definitely wanted to talk a little bit about that, and we will cover what to do in the second half if you have picks 6 through 12 on this next video.